Welcome to This Team is Killing Us, a podcast about what the Carolina Panthers do to good people. She is Lauren Brownlow. I am Demetri and Lauren, what is killing me today is what is killing us all. The heat is, it's exhausting. I guess I should have thought about this long before, but because this insane everything either is or feels like it's over 100 degrees, I have never had more respect for these dudes in minicamp than I do right now, because we've got this heat dome up and down the East Coast, and the alternative is, or you could be playing football in the desert right now. It's just all hell at the moment.
It's just, it's ridiculous. Every time, it's what's the meme when they walk, the Simpsons meme, I think, where I think it's the grandpa walks out the door and then walks right back in.
Yeah.
That's me. That's me when I walk outside right now. I'm just no. I'm not.
There's this great video I've seen shared on Instagram probably 5 times in the last 2 days of just Macho Man Randy Savage with sweat rolling down his face, just breathing like this, staring into the camera. And it's me anytime, the caption is me anytime my wife suggests we get a table outside right now. And that is
I saw that.
Dead on at the moment. Well, look, minicamp is over. We are into the start of, what do you call this? Because it's not camp, but that mandatory mini camp phase is over. Guys are at the facility. Some dudes are taking reps on the field. What do we call this period we're in right now?
I don't really know what to call it. Probably the period that they should be able to take summer vacations but aren't. Because
I think
the NFL is life or whatever, the stupid reason.
I think if this year Aaron Rodgers is actually showing up to the facility right now, that has ruined it for everybody. The guy you could count on to say fuck this shit, I'm not doing it, is now falling in line with his wife, the wind, to be in place in Pittsburgh. But whatever's going on right now, it is very encouraging to read everything coming out around Tetairoa McMillan, because this is from a news story from David Newton at ESPN, who Dave Canales just comes right out and said, the first quote in the article is, Tet McMillan is as advertised. And that is, look, we haven't taken a real snap yet, but that feels like a relief given where we've been after the last 2 drafts.
Yeah, I actually got nervous in hindsight when I did that piece about the wide receivers and how badly the Panthers have done with them. Because I was oh no, what if I was wrong? Because I also loved some of the ones we drafted in the past out of college.
Yeah.
And was sure they'd be great, so I don't think he's a Kelvin Benjamin, and I complimentary. To be clear, because Kelvin had a few good years. I'm not, it wasn't like he was a bust right away. It just took some.
I think you have probably forgotten this. The listeners don't know this, but when you and I were both going through the process of getting hired at 99.9 The Fan and 620 The Buzz to be a part of that morning show, Lauren was always going to be a host. They wanted Lauren for her opinions and her following and all that kind of stuff. And I was both a co-host and an executive producer. And so they wanted to know that I could, that being funny could translate to the sports realm. And they just gave me an assignment to write a parody song. And it was because you think of our old boss. Of course he did. It
wasn't a jib jab.
It was, well, I think this was before jib jab came into his lexicon. I think it coincided with the news that Kelvin Benjamin was going to miss the entire or the majority of the 2015 season. And I wrote a song, or I wrote a parody of Billy Joel's I'm Moving Out, about how terrible the season was going to be for Cam Newton because Benjamin's out was the chorus. And at that point, it tracked. It made sense we were thinking that way, especially compared to the rest of the receiving corps.
Yeah, I could see that for sure. I mean, listen, and one thing I've also learned with through these pieces I've been doing about the Panthers' losses, most painful losses, is that anytime anyone thinks they're going to be good, oh dear Lord, they are not.
Right.
So
right. And that, I think, is what makes the Tetairoa McMillan news or reports like so encouraging.
They're not getting Super Bowl talk though, so that's fine. That's the kiss of death.
Well, like I think they are ironically getting Super Bowl talk, right? Like I think as soon as the schedule came out, everybody did the Jacksonville first. Giglio added that all those years they went to the Super Bowl, not only they played Jacksonville first, they also Ohio State also won a national championship. And then PFT commenter added the element that J-Lo had gotten a divorce each of those years as well. So it's all adding up. I don't think anybody thinks the Panthers have that team though this year. And actually to that point that the Panthers don't have that team this year, Dave Canales told David Newton he is already changing where it is Tetairoa McMillan lines up on every play to see what it is he does best, or to see how the offense changes if you take him out of his best positions. It sounds like Tet is already the X receiver on this team.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I won't be surprised if
my guess would be Tetairoa McMillan as your X, XL as your Y, and Thielen in the slot, and then Coker will be, when they play a fourth receiver instead of a tight end.
Yeah, I could see that, and then Jatavian Sanders hopefully for the rest of it. But we shall see. That's my guy though. That's my
for sure. I mean, I think they're going to find all kinds of ways to get all four of those guys on the field, because I think they already know what it is they have and like about Tetairoa McMillan. They know Thielen is Bryce's safety blanket. Coker certainly proved himself, and I think that Dave Canales, just reading his comments and taking him at face value, really does see Tetairoa McMillan making XL better and making the amount that we put expectation-wise on XL more manageable now.
I hope that's true. And, I think we've talked about this a little bit with him, I think, but the added part of being close to where he played, South Carolina as well. I always feel like that adds a layer of pressure to people. Because the Panthers don't end up drafting a ton of people that are from here necessarily. Right. They don't end up with a ton of them on their team. I'm not saying they've never done it. Obviously we know they have, but famously they've never drafted. I think they've still never drafted a Clemson player, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's right.
Yeah. And so I'm not saying that's intentional. I'm just saying they haven't had that many. And so when they do get them, with whether it's a Peppers or whatever, that always adds another layer of scrutiny and pressure and to the whole thing, because obviously you like to be close to home and there's a degree of comfort there, but there's also a degree of I got to come through for my people, for my city, for my area, whatever you want to call it. And so I hope this takes pressure off. It seems like he's handled it great, which is good. Mm-hmm. And I hope that that's the case and that he can just relax and just improve those hands just a little bit, my guy. And we'll be okay.
So if Tetairoa McMillan is not going to go through some of the growing pains, or I guess if the team is not anticipating the same growing pains that XL did last year, and who your top four guys are likely to be, does that make it harder for HunterRenfrow? Speaking of Clemson players that are now Panthers, does that make it harder for Renfrow to make the roster just because he is not a young guy anymore by football standards? And he is coming off of this disease where he had to miss an entire season. I don't, it's tough, right? I don't root against him other than the fact that he cheated and beat Alabama for a national championship. I just don't see him as a value add for the Panthers right now.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think there's probably a let's just see how this goes element there of what's the worst that could happen? He ends up playing great and then all of a sudden it's a great story and it's feel good and everybody's okay. But I mean, how many receivers are they going to end up keeping? I think that's the interesting thing to monitor. I mean, they already have a lot that they could keep. And it's not an area of huge need, but it's certainly on the Panthers end, there's obviously nothing to lose there. So it's why not just try it? But on his end, maybe it's not. Like if he'd come in a year ago, if this were, obviously that wasn't necessarily going to be able to happen. But like if he had come in last year, there would have been more of a need and whatever. But now with the draft pick and then like with Coker coming on the way he did, and even like a David Moore.
Well, okay, so I'm glad you brought up Moore, because if you add Moore in there, there are 5 spots that are set, right?
Yeah.
Let's say the Panthers are probably going to keep 6 receivers. They might even only keep 5 to make room for one more tight end. I don't know. But if you're only going to keep 6 and it comes down to HunterRenfrow or Jimmy Horn Jr., aren't you taking the one that can be your kick returner too?
Yeah, probably.
And also is on a rookie deal.
Unless they just almost like slot him in their minds as like, this is special teams. Like if they designate a certain number of spots for like special teams players or whatever, maybe they don't necessarily designate him strictly that way, and that gives them some flexibility. But yeah, I would guess like 6 would be like the max, I would think that they
I would think so too. I wonder if all of, like, we took last week off and we are like through the summer until we get into the the real height of training camp, we are going to be doing every other week shows. Last week you heard, whether you were listening to Obvious and Giglio, local media, even NFL media, you heard a lot of optimism around this team. And I wonder how much of it you can trace back to drafting Tetairoa McMillan, not the excitement specifically for T-Mac, but for like, we all thought they should do one thing. They did something totally different, and it seems like a home run.
Yeah, maybe that's part of it, but I actually think it's probably more about like, okay, let's look at what they actually did in free agency. Because I remember when he was initially drafted, there was like this WTF reaction from a lot of people, especially nationally, of like, wait, what about the defense? But I think maybe some people sat down and like looked at what they'd added in free agency, look at what they picked up through the draft, and said like, all right, clearly this offense was humming along towards the end of last year. They just need the defense to be decent. The division sucks. Like, I think they just started to see how it could add up. Bryce's improvement towards the end of the year too. I mean, people were already on that bandwagon, but I think like they were a little bit like, ooh, that defense though. And then they didn't draft a defensive player. But I think once people sat down and started looking at it, they were like, well, it makes sense why they could, take
especially in rounds 2 and 3, when you get 2 guys that at least one, like all along, I thought there was a very good chance Nick Scorton was going to be in that James Pierce Jr. slot, right? Like was going to go between like 27 and 32. So that made you feel good. Prince McMillan seems to be the guy jumping off the page at training camp. So you've got to feel good about that. And that all goes back to, there was only one way this team was getting an X receiver and not breaking the bank to trade for a George Pickens or a DK Metcalf. And they did it. And so you got to give them all the credit in the world for that.
Yeah, for sure. And, it's not like, and look, a lot of people watched him in college, I think, especially like college football heads, I feel like really were kind of like, ooh, cool.
Well, yeah. I mean, like there aren't a lot of dudes that were jumping over defensive backs because they didn't have to jump that high to begin with. And we got one of them,
Yeah.
So I want to pivot here from talking about what the roster is right now to the fact that we are coming up on this time where formal training camp is going to begin, and that means camp cuts are going to start to happen. Look, everybody, since the dawn of fan-generated media, everybody loves the mythical, hypothetical roster moves. Like it's something we all did privately before we had an internet to do it on. But boy, so I say all that to say, like, don't put a lot of stock in this, but every single one of what I would call like the more popular fan blogs, everybody has ideas for what to add to this offense. And it's like, I don't understand what you're looking at that makes you think that's where whatever little money we have left needs to be spent.
Yeah, I don't, me. Well, look, think about how many, like, it's not necessarily fan sites, but like national people were talking about like, oh, the Panthers wide receiver room is bad and whatever. And before they drafted Tetairoa McMillan, this, I was one of the ones that was like, I don't really think so. like, I didn't think it was great, but I also didn't think it was, I thought it was in much, much better shape than it had been the previous year. Like with the way Coker had come on, with what, you know, even just like when you're talking pass catchers, what Sanders had shown, whatever. So I was sitting there like, I don't know, like that we're looking at like a lack of weapons or anything like that. I never saw that even before they added McMillan. So like now that they've done that, and then obviously the running back situation seems great right now in terms of like Dowdle and Hubbard. The only thing I could think of is there is some queasiness, I think, about the offensive line situation in places. And so maybe if that's where you want to go, okay. But like I said, I think you and I agree on this. Like, if you got money to spend at all, you got something you want to go buy. Sorry, you need to buy some defense.
So Christopher Knox of Bleacher Report has suggested that the Panthers act before the Jaguars make a move and trade for Travis Etienne, which seems like
excuse me?
Agreed. But hang on, Lauren, I'm going to make you even more upset. Zach Roberts of Sports Illustrated says with the reports that he is almost certainly going to be cut by the Saints, that this is the year the Panthers pounce on TaysomHill.
Oh,
now, all right. Knowing that TaysomHill would trigger an emotional reaction for Lauren is, and also, like, I'm just going to be completely transparent. I think TaysomHill works for Sean Payton. I don't think that means he works in the NFL. Does that make sense? Like, yes. And I think if you are adding him to the roster, you are adding him, even if you're using him as this Swiss Army knife type of player. And remember, he is 31 now? It's very different than when he was 20. Oh, no, wait a minute. He's like 33 now because he was 26 when he came into the league. So,
that makes sense because BYU and the Michigan.
Exactly. So that's very different than the way you could use him as a rookie when he didn't have all of these miles on him.
Yeah.
But more importantly, that's a tight end slot. Like, wouldn't we be better served putting JT Sanders in during those snaps that you would give to TaysomHill? Or Mitchell Evans or whoever it is that's going to be the tight end of the future here?
TaysomHill reminds me of like one of those, I don't know exactly what kind. So, forgive the clumsy analogy. Yeah. But there are some of these devices that do like 10 different things.
Sure. Yeah.
And you're like, cool. And I'm not saying it maybe at the beginning they do some of those things really well, but towards the end, they're suddenly not doing any of them well, and it's not as cool anymore. And that's kind of like it's like, well, what's the point? Why do you need something that does all of these things when you already have something that does these things?
Right. So it's like TaysomHill is like taking a picture with your iPhone and it looks fine. It's totally acceptable. In fact, compared to what we started with, compared to the early days of digital cameras, good even. But then you take a picture with a real camera, with a real lens, and you're like, oh, I get why people fawn all over this now. I think any dedicated tight end will always be that compared to TaysomHill.
I think you're right about the Peyton thing, too. And I'm not saying he couldn't ever have success anywhere else. Like, I'm not trying to dismiss him in that way, whatever, as much as I'd like to. But it's just, I do think, like you said, like the age. I mean, how old's Adam Thielen? He can't be that much older than him.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Like, I would think that Adam Thielen probably is the same age, if not.
Probably a few years older, I would guess. He's probably like 35, 36. I would guess, because the way they talk about him is like he's going to need to be taken out back soon,
I think there is also, like, forget TaysomHill versus any other move. I think there's a good case to be made for you do nothing right now, right? I think number one on offense, these dudes are bought into Bryce, and that is not something that came easily, right? Like they go ahead.
Yeah, and the thing about Taysom too is there's maybe the analogy too is something like this multi-tool thing that you can show off to people that's really not all that useful. It's like when you have a TaysomHill, you have this compulsion to use the TaysomHill all the time.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily, like you said, they already have a lot of really good weapons that they can use and incorporate. I don't want to see, it's like the offensive coordinator can't help themselves. They're like, ooh, but I have a Taysom here, and let me show everyone how smart I am. And it's like, can we not? Like, no.
It is. So my best friend in the world was my college roommate my sophomore year. We still, talk all the time. he and I took very different paths in life, right? He was a Marine. Now he works in the security industry. He goes to all of these conferences where he sees all of these cool security systems and weapons and all these kind of things that like you and I will never have need for in our life, right? But he wants me, because we are best friends, he wants me to see what it is that he gets to play with all the time. So for Christmas every year, he will send me a very nice, very cool version of a Swiss Army knife, right? Like a multi-tool that can do a lot more than, you know, your standard 3-thing Swiss Army knife. Every single one of them, which I admit are very cool when they come out of the package, every single one of them eventually just becomes a box opener. Like that's the only thing that makes sense to use it for.
Well, and like it's like a refrigerator that like sends emails. It's like why do you need that? Like, cool, wow, I can't believe it can do that. But also, why?
Yeah, the better case for doing nothing this year. Just everybody keep this in mind. Cade Mays and Taylor Moton both need new contracts at the end of next year. So does Jalen Coker, and I don't think we have a gauge on what range that's even going to be in at this point. And then, really, after the 26th season, you have to get a new deal for Icky, and you are at that point where you are thinking about picking up Bryce's 5th-year option, and for some teams, that means you go ahead and get a new deal done. Like, I think there's a better case for doing nothing, not just then waiting for the Saints to cut TaysomHill and Pounce, but for doing anything that doesn't make you better today.
Yeah, I'm with you. I just, you know, again, it's like sometimes people just like to look like they're doing something. And
along those lines, Lauren, if we are waiting on camp cuts and we are spending money, obviously it's the defense, right? Like how many times can we harp on the secondary? If there is I shouldn't say if there is. This is pretty simple. If there isn't an elite tier difference-making pass rusher, why are we even picking up the phone to his agent?
Right.
I think that's the position we're in now.
Yeah. No, I'm with you on that. Like that, it's just, you know, you have needs. Like you got to meet those needs, and you don't need to just like. This is like me walking through the non-food aisle at Aldi.
Sure.
It's like I don't need it. It's like, oh, how cute. Like I don't need any of that stuff.
Right.
I don't need it. But it's like, oh, but it's so cute, and it's like it's like $9 for a Bluetooth speaker or something, like a nice, and you're like, wow, but you don't need that. You don't need it.
I have an uncle who is no longer with us that used to, he was a very cheap man who used to say that the only thing aside from food, the only discretionary spending he could justify was canola oil because, I'm sorry, not canola oil, citronella, because you never want to be bit by mosquitoes. Yeah, that's the way he thought about it.
That feels like a need to me, but whatever.
I mean, I'm with you. Again, I would remind you this man was very cheap. If you are very cheap, we have a deal for you for the Sports Podcast Festival. Not only do we have a BOGO deal, buy one, get one half off on tickets at therialto.com. Just use the promo code SPF25 at checkout. But Lauren, the Sports Podcast Festival is not a night. It is a weekend this year. We are going to be partying the night before Friday night. We are calling it Night Zero for Week 0. Our friends at Extra Points are presenting this very cool evening at Bond Brothers East Side in Cary. It's a $10 ticket. Hand in the Dirt is on stage doing a live podcast, but that $10 ticket also gets you your first pint of OG Light. So, I mean, really, at that point, you take out what you would pay for the beer, and it's like you're paying $3 to be entertained.
That's what I was going to say, like about a $3 ticket there, yeah.
Right. So come on out, join us. That is going to be on Friday, August 22nd, and then, of course, the Sports Podcast Festival with Split Zone Duo, Ovius and Giglio, and Big Screen Sports, which I was on this week, by the way, talking about, do you know the college football recruiting movie Johnny Be Good, starring Anthony Michael Hall?
I've heard of it. Yeah. I've heard of it. I have not seen it, but I have heard of it.
You can listen to Big Screen Sports. It is, all three of us agreed from the get-go, utterly charmless. But it was fun to talk about. So anyway, go to therialto.com right now to get your tickets for the Sports Podcast Festival. SPF25 at checkout gets you buy one, get one half off on tickets. Lauren Brownlow, a few weeks ago, maybe even a couple of months ago at this point, the Olympic Committee or the U.S. Olympic Committee agreed to allow NFL players to be a part of the flag football that is going to happen at the Olympics in 2028 in Los Angeles. And you and I had the discussion of, is there any Panther we could see making Team USA? And, both of us, we threw around J.C. Horn. I suggested that maybe Dave Canales as the coach is more realistic. We might have been talking about the wrong team, because if you want to talk about who not only really is one of the best in his country or from his homeland in the NFL, but also seems very dedicated to playing in the Olympics, it is Chuba Hubbard.
Oh, Canada.
Yeah, so Hubbard, this is clearly, I think, the Panthers' best shot for an Olympian, because Chuba Hubbard started his athletic life, and we are talking about going back to when he was in grade school, as a sprinter. David Newton from ESPN talked to the woman that has been his track coach, or was his track coach, up until he stopped running track, and she said that for years he was telling her that he wanted to win an Olympic gold medal for Canada. Like, it seems like this is a foregone conclusion. Chuba Hubbard is going to be at the 2028 Olympics.
Probably, although Canada, they've been churning out some athletes lately in these other. So we'll see. I think you're probably right, but
so it's funny. Chuba has a Team Canada in mind for flag football, and he notes that there is a lot of Canadian NFL talent on the defensive side of the ball. And, he says, look, every country, U.S. included, already has a flag football team. So you've got to assume that you're going to be competing with those guys. But when it comes to Canada, there's a CFL to pull from as well. And I don't say that to say that I think if Chuba Hubbard wants to be on that team, he is going to be on that team. He is probably a better football player than all of those other guys. But there is a whole talent pool to pull from that you're not just going to be talking about when Team USA plays Team Canada in the Olympics. You are not going to be talking about all pros versus whoever's available. There are going to be guys that have gotten significant reps in various places for Team Canada. And Chuba could be, both the statistical and emotional leader of that team.
Look, I want him to be happy and to flourish and to do, but I swear to God, if he tears his ACL,
this is something I think about all the time. I mean, I actually, for the 2024 Olympics, like you see, I'm wearing my Celtic shirt right now. I was glad Jason Tatum didn't play a lot. I didn't like how much they were playing Derek White. I don't.
I get it.
I know we're all supposed to view playing for your country as the greatest honor of all. Country ain't paying your bills, dog. I'm sorry, I know that sounds cold, but I think the Celtics should get to dictate what it is that Jason Tatum does. I think the Panthers should get to dictate, hey, if you want to play for Team Canada, Chuba, or J.C. Horn, if you want to go play for Team USA or whoever, here are the conditions under which we are okay with it, because we do have a contract with you that says you play football for us.
Yeah. That's tough for me, because I also don't like the idea of teams dictating what people do.
Totally with you. But as a fan, I think it is okay to dismiss logic from this a little bit.
It feels less like logic and more like just giving a team, me endorsing a team, essentially just dictating every single aspect of a player's life, and I don't like that. I think there's probably something you could do to protect yourself if you're that team. And I'm okay with that. It's just maybe there's a portion of money you don't get or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. But I don't like the idea of just saying no.
I guess
I don't.
I guess when I say I'm okay dismissing logic, I mean as it stands right now with you and I just talking versus an actual practice. Because I'm with you. It makes me nervous. I think it makes me nervous on top of Just the idea of seeing, one of your team's players adding reps, because I don't like this. I don't think this is necessary. I think flag football in the Olympics is fucking stupid.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, first of all, yeah, I do kind of agree with that. And look, it's weird. I always have like this weird feeling, I think, watching athletes that I know from other sports compete in the Olympics. It just feels, it's always felt strange to me. Even watching like Team USA basketball compete and win. It's not like it's not cool. I'm not saying that, but there is this element there of like, oh, but this is just this other thing, because they don't take it as seriously as some countries do and stuff like that. And so it's almost like you almost like, I don't want to say I'm not rooting for them. I'm not going that far, but there is this element there of like, yeah, but like, look at Spain. Like those dudes are like 40 and pass the ball great and like this is their lives and they love each other and they're like bawling, crying when they lose. There is part of me that's like, oh, it would have been cool to see Spain.
Or
Serbia or whatever. Like
I've come to look at the Olympics like this, right? The US and China are so far out in front of everybody else in terms of Olympics. And China gets all of their medals in sports. I'm sorry, I'm just not watching. Maybe the women's gymnastics final night excluded. For the most part, I'm not watching the events.
Wow, no diving? Okay.
Yeah, no, not really.
I love diving.
So I have come to, do I want the U.S. to win? If it's close, of course, I'm going to root for, like, when Michael Phelps has tried to out-touch somebody at the wall, of course, I'm rooting for the U.S. But at this point, we are so good at everything that I want, like, the dude from Tonga winning the first medal in his country's history.
Yes,
that's the guy I'm rooting for.
That's part of what it is. And there's also like there's a place for certain sports, right? So like I will never I'm not that I watch golf that much as it is. I will never watch Olympic golf. I don't watch Olympic tennis, and I will watch tennis, but I'm just like, I don't really care. I don't. And so it's like sports that I'm like, no, but I can watch you other times. That's why I gravitate towards these sports too, like a gymnastics or whatever, which I love, or a figure skating, where it's like you don't see those as much throughout the year, or track and field even, because that's not a sport that we follow as closely throughout the year. So all of a sudden you're like following all these, and track and field's probably the one where I'm most USA, to be honest. And gymnastics, those two are probably the ones where I'm the most like, let's go. Yeah. And sometimes figure skating.
The Olympics are built for, and look, I mean, I enjoy Olympic basketball. I really like, since it's been introduced, both men's and women's. My favorite Olympic sport has been beach volleyball, because the action is constantly going all the time, right?
Yes.
So even though there are other times of year that is on your TV, especially basketball, I like those sports.
It's not something that consumes our imagination.
It would not hurt my feelings if they disappeared from the Olympics for, like, you know what? I'm never watching it, but like, give me more race walking. Give me more badminton. Like, those nerds don't have any other time to shine. I don't like flag football in the Olympics at all. I've been thinking about this a lot this week. I just like, this isn't. Do you know? All right, Lauren, how many medals do you think the U.S. won last year, or total, in every sport, gold, silver, and bronze combined?
I don't remember how many total medals there were. So that's hard for me. I'm like,
all right. So
I'm like, I don't know, 50, 60. I don't know.
The U.S. double that. The U.S. won 126 gold medals. The next closest country was China. They won 91. Now, to the point about how much further ahead these countries are of everybody else, and why we don't have to create events that cater to the United States.
That's what it is. Yeah.
The second you get out of the top 10 of total medals, you were talking about countries that didn't even win one. Like, it's that big of a divide at this point. Yes. So why are we doing this?
Right.
I don't know who's watching.
Yeah, I'm with you. It like I said, I mean, I might watch it for the curiosity factor, and it'll probably move pretty quickly, but I'm also just like I said, for me, the Olympics is honestly about watching sports that I don't usually watch. Right. So, that's what I gravitate towards.
Was it 3 Olympics ago that they introduced rugby, and everybody said, oh, no, just wait. Everybody's going to be watching Olympic rugby. And the entire time, the only highlight we've had of Olympic rugby is that American woman whose name I forget, going literally end zone to end zone, throwing people off of her. Like, I don't think that is necessarily a successful Olympic program. We just got a fun moment out of it.
Yeah, I don't know. Rugby's a tough one because it's one of those sports that's difficult to just jump into. I mean, it's not super. It can be. It's complicated. Some of the rules, you're like, what? Huh?
Yeah,
it's hard. It can be hard to follow.
That's why it works as highlights on social media, because you can see. God, it's going to drive me nuts if I can't remember this woman's name.
Watch the Six Nations show though, if you want a rugby or Three Nations. It was Three Nations, Six. It's on Netflix. It's about like rugby between like anyway. Watch it. It's really good.
You can understand the highlights of because just in highlight form it looks like football, right? You don't have to know the rules. You just know that is a hoss stiff arming somebody that is going to go flying across the field.
My friends in college played rugby, and so did my ex. And so, like, any time they talked about scrums in football, he would get so mad and be like, "That's not what a scrum is," because it's not. It's like a rugby term, and it's not quite what scrums are. Very specific things. So it was just funny to me. But yeah, it's not always the like friendliest TV watching sport or whatever. And all my friends played in college. I still could not tell you almost anything. So, except that when all my girlfriends were like, "You want to go out and play?" I was like, I played tennis. I was like, I don't do. Your girl does not do contact sports.
So we went down to Pride on Saturday, and Raleigh Rugby was one of the places that had a booth set up, and it was so funny because everything else for the most part is like little boutiques, like stores, right? And then there's Raleigh Rugby giving people information about
they knew where to go. Yeah.
But also, Lauren, it was so funny to watch these people that think, oh, it's going to be flag football, suddenly discover what rugby is and immediately lose interest.
That's the thing. Like at least almost half the people that I knew well in college that played rugby got at least one super serious injury that they were like, okay, I'm playing a club sport, but this is not worth it. I'm like,
right. I want to end this week's show by talking about a ranking from NFL.com that really caught my eye. The question was, who was the best wide receiver draft pick of the 21st century? They list Steve Smith number 2. And you've got to assume this has a lot to do with value, right? He's a 3rd round pick and far and away is the best wide receiver that the team has ever had. One of the best wide receivers that the league has seen since he came into the league. So very fair. They put him behind Justin Jefferson, who was the 5th or 6th wide receiver taken in his draft. Jefferson was still a 1st rounder, though. So my question, Lauren, knowing that Jefferson is a 1st rounder, could you say that's kind of disqualifying? I think Steve Smith might be the best wide receiver pick.
If you're going with value, I think 100%.
Yes. Yeah,
like,
I mean, like...
to be fair a little bit, though, it did, and I had to refresh myself a bit on this, too. It took Smitty a couple years to, like, really break through at receiver. At first, they were really just putting him in returns, and I remember he was irritated with that.
But I'll say this, because I thought about this in the context of, like, I would not take Steve Smith. If you're talking about anybody that was drafted since 2000, I'm not taking Steve Smith before I take Julio Jones. I'm not taking him before Calvin Johnson. I'm not taking him before Larry Fitzgerald. All of those guys were top 10 picks, right? Like, I think all but Julio were top 3 picks. So let's throw them out. But along the lines of those guys, like, Larry Fitzgerald was being lined up as wide receiver, and it took him a season for the Cardinals to sort of either realize what they had in him or him to turn into what they had in him. So I don't know that I did.
Remember when it used to take a while?
Right. remember when that was okay and we didn't freak out about it?
That's what I mean. Like, it's like, oh, remember when like it took some people some time to adjust to the NFL? Yeah. And people were okay with that and understood that that's part of it.
Yeah. I think that value-wise, I mean, look, there are guys on this list that, like, you can't dismiss belong in the conversation, right? Tyreek Hill was a 5th round pick, but think about the reason Tyreek Hill was a 5th round pick versus the reason Smitty was a 3rd round pick, right?
Wow.
Are you
could have just left him off.
I mean, if we are talking about production, which is like the NFL has proven over and over again, the only thing they care about, I don't think you could have.
I think okay.
I hear what you're saying.
The thing, I would have been fine with it, honestly, if they had talked about it honestly, but I'm sure they didn't. So in that case, I'm like, just the complete gall to be like, wow, can't believe they let him go that far. Yeah. I hate you. Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah. Is there a case to be made that Smitty is even a better draft pick for the Panthers, impactful to team history, than Cam? Value, obviously, it's a no-brainer, so don't even consider value. Just think about what they meant to the team.
I would say no, only because I think what Cam brought in terms of like people like Smitty, don't get me wrong.
Sure.
But a receiver is never going to be that face of a franchise the way a quarterback is. And I think he brought a coolness and a respectability to the Panthers and attention on the Panthers that had never been there before, even when Smitty was there doing his thing. So to me, it's still Cam in the way he changed that part of it.
You may dismiss this a little bit, but I do want to hear what it is you think about this. I also think that when Smitty is coming out of Utah, we're not even talking about Urban Meyer's 2 years at Utah yet. Like, Utah is not notoriously underrated, an underrated football power. When Cam gets drafted, we had just seen him single-handedly win a national championship.
That's the thing, right? Like, we had seen him do something that even at the time we were like even before we looked at like who else went to the NFL from that Auburn team, which you can still do now. It's right there available for you. Look at how many NFL stars he was playing alongside. Oop, I'm still looking. Where are they?
Right.
So, to look at what he carried to a national title in college football is absurd. Like, and we had never seen, and even at the time we knew it was impressive, but now it's even
guys,
more so.
Carolina Tar Heel fans, if you've forgotten, just go look at who his head coach was that he carried to a national championship and tell me he is not Cam is not an amazing human being.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, to me, that was what was so impressive. Like, the fact that we were even having, like, the fact that people were like, Blake Bortles, or I was like, are you serious? No. Why? Are y'all okay?
Right.
Like, why are we having, I don't care about his throwing. I don't care how accurate he is. I do not care. Bring him right here. Like, are y'all serious right now? Like, no.